Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Topic today is the 20 short philosophy stories that can make your life better. Life is full of hidden lessons, and sometimes the simplest stories hold the deepest wisdom. What if a single story could shift your perspective, help you overcome challenges, or even change the way you live? In this video, we bring you 20 powerful short stories, each carrying a timeless lesson about life, wisdom, and personal growth. These tales, drawn from different cultures and philosophies, will open your mind, touch your heart, and leave you with insights that last a lifetime. Whether it's about resilience, kindness, choices, or self-discovery, each story will guide you toward a wiser and more fulfilled life. So sit back, relax, and let these stories inspire you. 1. The Mousetrap and the Lesson of Care. In a small farmhouse on the edge of a village, a little mouse lived in a corner of the farmer's kitchen. One day, while sneaking around in search of food, it was terrified to see the farmer setting up a shiny new mousetrap right near its nest. Fear filled its heart, and it immediately ran off to seek help. The mouse hurried to the hen, who was pecking at the ground for food. Hen, I'm in danger. The farmer has set a mousetrap. If I'm not careful, I'll die." The hen looked at the mouse indifferently and clucked, "Oh dear, that's not my problem. I'm not afraid of a mousetrap." The mouse was disappointed, but didn't give up. It ran to the pigsty, where the pig was lazily lying in a pile of dry straw. Pig! The farmer has set a mousetrap. I'm so scared. Please help me think of a way to escape." The pig shook its head and sighed. "What does that have to do with me? I'm big and strong. A tiny mousetrap can't do anything to me. Don't bother me with this." Feeling desperate, the mouse ran to the cow's pen. The cow was leisurely chewing grass under the shade of a tree. The mouse anxiously recounted the story of the mousetrap. The cow listened, sighed, and said, "I'm a cow. A mousetrap can't affect me. Don't worry too much, little mouse." Heartbroken, the mouse returned home, filled with fear. It became even more cautious when moving around the kitchen, staying as far away from the deadly trap as possible. That night, a sharp snap echoed from the kitchen. The trap had sprung. The farmer rushed over to check, but it wasn't the mouse that was caught. A venomous snake had accidentally gotten trapped instead. As the farmer approached, the snake struggled and bit him on the leg. The venom made him gravely ill. His worried wife decided to cook chicken porridge to nourish him, and so the hen was slaughtered. The farmer's condition did not improve. In fact, it worsened. Relatives came to visit, and to serve the guests, the family decided to butcher the pig. A few days later, the farmer passed away. To cover the funeral expenses, the family sold the cow. From its small corner in the kitchen, the mouse quietly watched everything unfold. It sighed and thought, it all started with the mousetrap. But no one cared. Lesson. In life, when someone comes to you with a problem, don't dismiss it just because you think it doesn't concern you. Some issues, no matter how small, can create a chain reaction, and one day, they might affect you too. The Carpenter and the Door of Life. An old carpenter had worked diligently for many years in the workshop of a wealthy employer. He was famous for his skilled hands and exquisite wooden creations. Throughout his life, he dedicated himself to building the most beautiful houses and the sturdiest doors. But after years of hard work, he felt it was time to retire and enjoy his old age. One day, he went to his employer and said, "Sir, I have worked here for a long time. Now, I want to retire, return to my family, and spend time with my children and grandchildren." The employer listened and then slowly said, "I am sorry to hear that, but before you leave, I have one last request. Could you build one final house for me?" The carpenter reluctantly agreed, but his heart was no longer in the work. He worked carelessly, choosing cheap wood and neglecting the fine details in his cuts and joints. The house was completed quickly, but it lacked the craftsmanship and dedication he had always put into his work before. When the house was finished, he went to his employer to hand it over. The employer smiled, handed him a key, and said, "This is my gift to you. This house is yours. Thank you for your years of dedication." The carpenter was stunned. He couldn't believe his ears. If he had known this house was for himself, he would have put all his heart into making it perfect. But now it was too late. He stood still, looking at the shabby house before him, the final work of his life, yet the place he would now have, to live in for the rest of his days. Lesson: life is like building a house. Every day, every action, every decision you make is a brick that shapes your future. If you live carelessly and don't put your heart into what you do, one day you may find yourself living in the very house built by your own negligence. 3. A mother's bowl of soup. A young boy grew up in a poor family. Every day, his mother would prepare a hot bowl of soup for him before he left for school. Though they didn't have much money, she always tried her best to save up so her son could have a proper meal. As time passed, the boy grew up, studied hard, and earned a scholarship to attend university in the city. On the day he left home, his mother placed a small box in his hand and said, "Make sure you eat well and take care of yourself. Whenever you feel tired, open this box." The son moved to the city and became busy with classes, exams, and social gatherings with friends. Gradually, he forgot about the warm bowls of soup his mother used to make every day. One day, after a particularly difficult exam, he returned to his dorm room feeling exhausted and lonely. Suddenly, he remembered the small box his mother had given him. He opened it and found an old piece of paper inside. On it, his mother had written, "I know you never liked the soup I made, but I still cooked it every day because I wanted you to be healthy. No matter how far you go, please don't forget that there is always someone willing to sacrifice everything for you. Take care of yourself, my son." Tears welled up in his eyes. He realized that his mother's soup was not just a simple meal, it was a symbol of unconditional love. A few days later, he went back home to visit. His mother, just as before, cooked him a hot bowl of soup. This time, he didn't complain. He sat down, picked up the bowl, and slowly savored each spoonful. For the first time in his life, he truly tasted its richness. Not just the flavor of the soup, but the taste of love, sacrifice, and family. Lesson: sometimes we only learn to appreciate something after we've lost it, or when we are far from it. But a parent's love is always there, whether we realize it or not. Be grateful for the little things in life, because sometimes they are the most precious. 4. The shadow of oneself. There was a young man who was always haunted by his past. He had made mistakes, failed, and hurt others. No matter how hard he tried to move on, he felt as if a dark shadow constantly followed him, reminding him of all the terrible things he had done. One day, he went to see a Zen master for advice. He asked, "Master, how can I escape the shadow of my past? It clings to me and keeps me from being happy." The Zen master smiled, led him outside into the sunlight, and said, "Try running." The young man was puzzled but obeyed. He ran as fast as he could, but the shadow kept chasing him. Out of breath, he stopped and said, "Master, I can't escape it." The Zen master gently said, "Then turn around and face the sun." The young man turned around, and instantly, his shadow was cast behind him. The Zen master smiled warmly and said, "When you keep running away, the past will always follow you. But when you face the light of the present, the darkness will naturally fall behind." Lesson: don't let the past control you. Live in the present, focus on the positive, and the shadows of the past will gradually fade away. 5. The cup of water. A philosophy professor walked into the classroom holding a cup full of water. He raised the cup and asked his students, "Do you think this cup is heavy?" The students replied, "No, professor, it's not too heavy." The professor nodded and continued, "If I hold this cup for a few minutes, I can handle it. But what if I hold it for an hour?" One student responded, "Your arm will start to hurt." The professor smiled. "Exactly. And what if I hold it for an entire day?" The class murmured, "You'll be exhausted." The professor placed the cup on the table and said, "Worries and troubles in life are just like this cup. If you hold on to them for a short while, they don't affect you much. But if you hold on to them for too long, they will drain your energy and exhaust you. Learn to let go when necessary." Lesson: life is full of worries and pressures, but don't hold on to them for too long. Sometimes, learning to let go is the best way to move forward. The lesson from the bamboo tree. A young man was eager for success. He sought out a master of philosophy and asked, "Master, how can I achieve success as quickly as possible?" The master led him to a bamboo forest and said, "Observe these bamboo trees." The young man was puzzled. "What's so special about these bamboo trees?" The master explained, "Bamboo doesn't grow immediately. After the seed is planted, for the entire first year, nothing appears. The second year, still nothing changes. Even in the third and fourth years, there is no visible growth. But in the fifth year, suddenly, it shoots up rapidly, growing tall within just a few months." The young man reflected for a moment. The master continued, "During those first 4 years, the bamboo was not idle. It was growing a strong root system beneath the ground. Only when the foundation was firm enough could it rise so powerfully." Looking at the young man, the master added, "You are the same. Do not rush for immediate success. Be patient and focus on building a strong foundation, and one day you will rise higher than you ever imagined." Lesson: success takes time and perseverance. Don't be discouraged when you don't see immediate results. Perhaps you are in the process of building the strongest foundation for your future. 7. The Fisherman and the Businessman. A wealthy businessman visited a small coastal fishing village and saw a fisherman lying leisurely on the beach, sipping wine and gazing at the sea. The businessman asked, "Why aren't you out fishing?" The fisherman smiled and replied, "I already went fishing this morning. Now it's time to relax." The businessman frowned. "If you went out fishing more often, you could catch more fish, buy a bigger boat, and expand your business." The fisherman asked, "And then what?" The businessman enthusiastically responded, "You'll become rich, and then you can relax and enjoy life." The fisherman chuckled softly, "But I'm already enjoying life right now." The businessman was stunned, realizing that sometimes happiness isn't about chasing more. It's about how we live in the present. Lesson: don't spend your life chasing the future and forget to enjoy the present. Happiness isn't a destination, it's how you live each day. The magic mirror. Once upon a time, there was a young man who always felt unhappy. He envied the success of others and believed life had treated him unfairly. One day, he heard about a wise sage who possessed a magic mirror that could reflect a person's true soul. He went to the sage and said, "Master, I want to look into the mirror to see my destiny." The sage led him to a large mirror. As he gazed into it, he didn't see his own face, but instead saw a scowling expression, envious eyes, and a mouth that never stopped complaining. Startled, he exclaimed, "This isn't me! This mirror must be broken." The sage shook his head and replied, "No, this is your true reflection, a person who is always dissatisfied with life. But this mirror has a secret. If you change your heart, the image in the mirror will change too." The young man left, carrying the sage's words with him. From that day on, he practiced gratitude, stopped comparing himself to others, and focused on what he had. A year later, he returned. This time, when he looked into the mirror, he saw a young man with confident eyes and a bright, happy smile. Lesson: Life is a mirror that reflects our inner world. If you are always negative, the world around you will seem dark. But if you live with optimism, happiness will find its way to you. 9. The pearl and the grain of sand deep in the ocean. A small oyster was writhing in pain because a grain of sand had gotten inside its shell. The grain was hard and sharp, causing it immense discomfort. It lamented, "Why must I endure this pain?" But instead of complaining, it began to secrete layers of nacre to coat the grain of sand. Day by day, the layers thickened, transforming the sharp grain into a beautiful pearl. Years later, a diver discovered the radiant pearl and brought it to shore. People marveled at its beauty, yet no one knew that it was born from the pain the oyster had endured. Lesson: life's hardships are like the grain of sand inside the oyster. If you learn to face and transform them, you will create precious pearls in your own life. Two monks and a young woman, two monks, were on their way back to the monastery when they came across a young woman standing by the riverbank. The river was flowing swiftly and she couldn't cross on her own. The older monk bent down, lifted her onto his back, and carried her across the river. Once they reached the other side, he gently set her down and continued on his way. The younger monk walking beside him felt uneasy. After some time, he could no longer contain himself and said, "Brother, we are monks. How could you carry a woman like that?" The older monk smiled and replied, "I put her down a long time ago. Are you still carrying her in your mind?" Lesson: in life, we often hold on to past events, burdening ourselves with unnecessary suffering. Learn to let go, just as the wise monk did. 11. The lamp and the wind ant. An old man lived alone in a small village. Every evening, he would light an oil lamp and place it by the window. The villagers asked him, "Why do you light the lamp when no one comes to visit you?" The old man smiled kindly and replied, "This lamp is not only to light my way, but also to help others find their path in the darkness." One night, a great storm swept through the village. The strong wind plunged many houses into darkness, but the small lamp by his window continued to shine. The next morning, a stranger came to his house and said, "Thank you. Last night, thanks to your light, I was able to find my way home." Lesson: sometimes, the small good deeds we do can help others in ways we never expect. Keep being kind, for your light may guide someone in need. 8. The lesson from the seed a young boy received. A seed from his father, who told him, "Plant this in the soil." The boy did as he was told, but the next day he saw no changes. Growing impatient, he dug up the seed every day to check if it had sprouted. Because of this constant disturbance, the seed could not grow. His father shook his head and said, "You must be patient. Plants need time to grow. If you keep digging it up, it will never sprout." The boy understood and began to care for the seed with patience and love. After some time, a fresh green sprout emerged from the soil. Lesson: good things in life. Take time to grow. Be patient and nurture your dreams instead of rushing for immediate results. The burden on his shoulders. A man was walking along a rugged road carrying a heavy sack on his shoulders. He struggled with every step, sweat dripping down his face. A kind coachman passed by and offered him a ride. The man gladly got onto the cart. However, strangely, he still kept the sack on his shoulders instead of putting it down. The coachman was puzzled and asked, "Why don't you put your sack down? The cart is carrying you now." The man hesitated and replied, "I've carried it for so long that I'm afraid I won't be used to putting it down." Lesson: in life, we sometimes carry burdens that we don't need to bear. But because of habit or fear, we don't dare to let go. Learning to trust and release our worries can make our journey much lighter. 14. A bowl full of water. A student came to a wise master to seek knowledge. Upon arrival, he eagerly shared everything he already knew. The master smiled and began pouring water into a bowl in front of him. The bowl filled up, yet he continued, pouring, causing the water to overflow. The student quickly exclaimed, "Master, the water is spilling over." The master nodded and said, "Just like your mind. If you come here with a full bowl, you won't be able to receive anything new. Empty it first so there is room for fresh knowledge." Lesson: to learn and grow, we must be humble, let go of our preconceptions, and be open to new knowledge. Words are like nails. A boy had a terrible temper and often shouted at others. One day, his father gave him a bag of nails and said, "Each time you get angry, hammer a nail into the fence." On the first day, the boy hammered 30 nails, but as time passed, he learned to control his anger, and the number of nails decreased. Eventually, he no longer needed to hammer any nails. His father then said, "Now, pull each nail out." The boy did as instructed. When he was done, his father pointed at the fence full of holes and said, "Every time you lose your temper, your words are like nails. You may apologize, but the wound remains." Lesson: words have great power. Think before you speak to avoid hurting others. The Carpenter and His Last House. An old carpenter decided to retire after many years of work. His employer asked him to build one last house before leaving. The carpenter agreed, but having lost motivation, he worked carelessly, choosing cheap materials and neglecting his craftsmanship. When the house was finished, his employer handed him the keys and said, "This is my gift to you for your years of dedication." The carpenter was stunned. He realized he had built the very house he would live in, with poor effort. Lesson: every day we are building our own lives. If we work carelessly, we will receive undesirable results. Always give your best effort because you are the one who will live in the house you create. F. The Two Wolves. A boy asked his grandfather. Inside every person, there are two wolves, one good and one evil. They are always fighting. Which one will win? The grandfather smiled and said, "The one you feed more." Lesson: inside each of us exists kindness and selfishness. Your thoughts and actions will determine which one grows stronger. 18. Dirty hands and clear water. A man complained to his teacher that the world was full of evil. The teacher handed him a bowl of clear water and said, "Dip your dirty hands into this water." The man did so, and immediately, the water became murky. The teacher said, "The water isn't dirty by itself, it was your hands that made it so. If you want the world to be pure, first cleanse yourself." Lesson: before judging the world, improve yourself first. When everyone strives to be better, the world naturally becomes a better place. The elephants and a small ropa man passing by an elephant training camp noticed that the massive elephants were tied with only a small rope. He wondered why they didn't break free. The trainer explained, "When they were young, we tied them with this rope. Back then, they weren't strong enough to break it. Over time, they came to believe they could never escape, even though they are now strong enough to do so." Lesson: many people are limited by past beliefs, even when they have grown much stronger. Dare to break free from the barriers you set for yourself. A glass of salt and a Leica student was always troubled by small worries. His teacher handed him a glass of salt water and told him to drink. The student frowned and said, "It's too salty." Then the teacher took him to a lake and asked him to pour in the same amount of salt. The teacher asked, "Now, taste the water from the lake. Does it still taste salty?" The student replied, "No, I can't taste the salt anymore." The teacher smiled and said, "Life's troubles are like salt, but how much they affect you depends on whether you are a small glass of water or a vast lake." Lesson: expand your heart and mind, and you will find it easier to overcome difficulties. Don't let small troubles make you miserable.